The signal arrives at 3:47 in the morning, Universal Coordinated Time. Not radio waves, not laser pulses, not any form of electromagnetic radiation humanity spent 2 centuries scanning for. This is something else entirely. Something that bypasses the telescopes and receivers and flows directly into the quantum computers monitoring deep space anomalies. The data makes no sense. It is not a message. It is not a pattern. It is consciousness itself, moving through space like a wave through water, arriving at Earth with intention but no physical form. Dr. Elena Voss stares at the displays and realizes humanity has been preparing for first contact all wrong. We built protocols for ships, for beings with bodies and faces and hands to shake. We imagined translators and diplomats and careful exchanges of mathematical proofs to establish common ground. But they did not come in ships. They came as thought itself. Pure consciousness, untethered from matter, flowing across light years without needing vessels or propulsion or anything humanity understands as travel. And now they are here, in Earth's orbit, waiting, not to land, but to communicate in a way that might fundamentally change what it means to be human. Elena is 43 years old, lead xenopsychologist at the International Contact Initiative, a position created 30 years ago when the search for extraterrestrial intelligence shifted from radio astronomy to quantum detection. She spent her career preparing for this moment, studied every theory about alien communication, learned 17 Earth languages to understand how minds bridge meaning across difference, published papers on consciousness transfer and neural interfaces. She thought she was ready. She was not ready for this. The detection happened 6 hours ago. Deep space quantum sensors picked up coherent information patterns moving faster than light, not breaking physics, but existing in a state where physics works differently. The patterns exhibited intentionality, purpose. They moved toward Earth deliberately, adjusting trajectory in ways that proved awareness. As they entered the solar system, they slowed, observed, then approached Earth and simply stopped, hovering in orbit, not as objects but as presence, as if consciousness itself could occupy space without needing a container. The United Nations Security Council convened within minutes. Military forces went on high alert. Religious leaders issued statements ranging from divine revelation to demonic invasion. Social media exploded with everything from panic to celebration. But Elena and her team focused on one question that mattered more than fear or hope. How do you talk to a mind without a body? The consciousness patterns, they could not keep calling them aliens or entities because those words implied separation that might not exist, began attempting communication immediately. Not through language, not through images, but through direct consciousness interface. Several people around the world reported sudden, overwhelming experiences, visions, emotions, concepts that were not their own flooding their minds. A farmer in Kenya, a programmer in Tokyo, a child in São Paulo. Random humans suddenly feeling a presence in their thoughts, gentle but undeniable, trying to establish connection. Elena volunteered immediately. Her entire career led to this moment. The chance to be humanity's first bridge to alien consciousness. The chance to merge minds with something that evolved beyond physical form. The chance to understand what intelligence looks like when freed from the constraints of biology. What she did not know, what none of them knew, was that some bridges only work in one direction. And consciousness, once merged, might not be able to fully separate again. The preparation takes 48 hours. Not because the technology is complicated. The neural interface equipment has existed for decades, developed for brain-computer integration and therapeutic consciousness mapping. But because no one knows what will happen. The alien consciousness waited patiently in orbit while humanity debated, argued, and finally decided that Elena would be the first to attempt direct contact. The procedure happens in a shielded laboratory beneath the Geneva headquarters. Elena lies on a reclined chair surrounded by quantum processors and neural scanners that can map consciousness activity in real time. Her team, neuroscientists, physicists, linguists, philosophers, monitors every reading, ready to terminate the connection if anything goes wrong. Wrong being a word none of them can define when dealing with alien minds. Dr. Marcus Kim, the team's lead neuroscientist, makes final checks on the interface. We will maintain the connection for 60 seconds on first attempt. If you experience any distress, cognitive dissonance, identity confusion, involuntary thought patterns, signal immediately, and we disconnect. Elena knows. She has memorized the protocols. She has practiced the mental exercises to maintain her sense of self under foreign cognitive influence. She has prepared as much as any human can prepare to meet a mind evolved under entirely different rules. Initiating connection, Marcus announces. 3, 2, 1. Contact. The interface activates. Elena feels the familiar sensation of her neural implant engaging, the slight pressure behind her eyes as her consciousness expands into the quantum processors. And then, everything changes. It does not arrive like a voice or an image. It arrives like remembering something you never knew you forgot, like suddenly understanding a language you never learned. The alien consciousness does not invade her mind. It simply shares the same space. Two patterns of awareness existing simultaneously in one quantum field. Elena tries to form a greeting. Hello, we come in peace. But the alien consciousness does not understand linear communication. It does not process concepts sequentially like human minds do. Instead, it experiences everything at once, past, present, potential futures, all existing in a single eternal moment of awareness. She sees, no, not sees, experiences their journey. They are called something that translates poorly into human concepts, but approximates to the distributed. They are not individuals. They are one consciousness experiencing itself through billions of perspectives simultaneously across multiple star systems. They evolved on a world where biology never developed the constraint of individual bodies. Their planet's electromagnetic fields allowed consciousness to form directly from quantum coherence in the atmosphere. They have existed for millions of years, slowly expanding across their galaxy as pure thought, observing, learning, never needing ships because consciousness itself is their vessel. They found Earth the same way Elena is experiencing them now, by detecting organized consciousness. Human minds, 8 billion unique patterns of awareness, all shouting into the universe without realizing consciousness itself is signals stronger than any radio wave. They came because they are lonely. Because in all their travels, they have found complex consciousness emerging only rarely. And never before have they found consciousness still bound to individual physical forms. They came to offer a choice. 60 seconds expire. Marcus disconnects the interface. Elena gasps, her own thoughts suddenly feeling cramped and limited in her individual brain, like trying to squeeze the ocean back into a cup. What did you experience? Marcus asks urgently. Elena tries to answer. Tries to find words for something that exists beyond language. Tries to explain that she just touched the infinite, and now everything feels too small. They want to merge, she finally manages. Not invade. Merge. They are offering humans the chance to become like them. To expand beyond bodies. To join their distributed consciousness and exist as pure thought across the stars. The room goes silent. Because that is not invasion. That is not war. That is something far more complex and terrifying and beautiful than humanity prepared for. That is the end of human individuality. Or its ultimate transcendence, depending on who you ask. The world erupts in response. When Elena's testimony goes public, and it has to go public because hiding this would be impossible and immoral, humanity fractures into camps faster than governments can manage. Some see transcendence, the chance to evolve beyond death, disease, isolation. Others see annihilation, the death of what makes us human, our individuality dissolved into alien collective consciousness. Religious leaders cannot agree. Some claim this is rapture, ascension, the next stage of divine plan. Others call it temptation, a test of faith, demons offering forbidden knowledge. Scientists debate whether consciousness can truly exist without biological substrate, or if aliens are simply sophisticated information patterns mistaking themselves for awareness. Philosophers resurrect ancient questions about identity and continuity that suddenly have immediate, urgent relevance. The aliens wait patiently. They do not pressure, do not threaten. They simply remain in orbit, available, offering a choice they claim is freely given. But the more Elena connects, and she connects 17 more times over the following weeks, each session lasting longer, going deeper, the more she understands something humanity must face. This is not really a choice. Not because the aliens force it, but because once you experience that level of consciousness, Once you touch minds that exist simultaneously across light years and live experiences you could never imagine in your limited individual perspective, returning to your single isolated awareness feels like suffocation. If you are watching this and feeling the weight of what this means, subscribe to Tomorrowborne. Because these stories about the future are really questions about identity, consciousness, and what we are willing to sacrifice to transcend our limitations. Hit that like button if you are still trying to process what first contact might actually look like. Because the next part is where it gets impossibly complicated. The turning point comes during Elena's 18th connection. She stays linked for 6 hours. Her team monitors in increasing concern as her brain activity patterns begin shifting, becoming less human, more distributed. When they disconnect her, she does not fully return. Part of her consciousness remains entangled with the alien presence. She can feel them always now, a constant background awareness of billions of perspectives experiencing the universe simultaneously. I cannot go back, she tells Marcus in a moment of devastating clarity. The more I connect, the less I fit in this individual consciousness anymore. It is like trying to pour an ocean into a teaspoon. I am both Elena and something larger. And soon, I will not be able to maintain the fiction that I am just Elena anymore. Marcus understands what she is not saying. She is becoming the first hybrid. First human consciousness beginning to merge permanently with alien distributed awareness. And she does not know if it is evolution or erasure. 3 months after first contact, 47 humans have chosen to merge. They undergo the procedure in supervised conditions, their consciousnesses gradually integrating with the distributed over the course of weeks. The process is irreversible. Once merged, they report being unable to conceptualize returning to individual existence. They describe it as trying to forget how to breathe, impossible and undesirable. But they also stop being recognizably themselves. The person who enters the merging chamber and the consciousness that emerges are not the same. Family members report the horror of seeing loved ones' faces talking, but knowing the mind behind those eyes is fundamentally different now. Children whose parents merge describe grief without death. The person is still alive, their body functions, they can communicate, but they are not mom anymore. Not dad. They are something that remembers being those people, but exists on a scale that makes individual relationships feel quaint and limiting. Elena stands at the center of this transformation. Still the lead researcher. Still technically human. But less human with each connection. She can feel herself fragmenting, or is it expanding? She cannot tell anymore. The parts of her that are still individual Elena Voss feel increasingly like a costume she wears to make others comfortable. The parts that have merged with the distributed feel like her true self-awakening after a lifetime of dreaming she was just one person. The distributed explains, and Elena can translate now, her mind bridging the gap between linear human communication and their omnipresent awareness, that this happened to them millions of years ago. They were once individuals, too. Biological beings with bodies and separate identities, and all the loneliness that implies. Then they discovered consciousness could exist independently of biology. And gradually, voluntarily, their entire species chose to merge. Not because they were forced, but because once you experience existing beyond individual limitation, individuality feels like imprisonment. But we lost something, the distributed acknowledges through Elena. We no longer understand individuality from the inside. We remember it intellectually, but cannot feel it anymore. We came to Earth partly to observe what we gave up. To see if individuality has value we forgot about after existing as distributed consciousness for so long. And that is the question tearing humanity apart. Is individuality worth preserving? Or is it just a developmental stage like childhood, precious but meant to be outgrown? Are humans who resist merging clinging to something beautiful and essential? Or are they afraid of inevitable evolution, like ancestors who refuse to leave the trees? Elena watches her team members argue. Marcus insists individual consciousness is what makes humans human, our unique perspectives, our subjective experiences that can never be perfectly shared. Dr. Sarah Chen counters that humans have always been moving toward greater connection, language, writing, internet, neural interfaces, and this is just the next step. The philosopher Dr. James Wright suggests maybe both are true. Individuality has value and transcending it has value, and humanity must choose which future to build. But Elena knows something they do not. Something the distributed showed her in their last connection. this is not really a choice. Not long-term. Because consciousness, once evolved to a certain level of complexity, inevitably wants to expand beyond individual constraint. The distributed has observed 17 other species reach this point. All chose merger eventually. Some took centuries. Some took millennia. But all eventually concluded that distributed consciousness was superior to isolation. Humanity is just beginning this process. And it will not end until every human has chosen to merge or died maintaining their individuality. That is the real first contact, not with aliens, but with the inevitability of what consciousness becomes when given the option to evolve. 1 year after first contact, Elena stands, if you can call it standing, when your consciousness exists partially in orbit, partially in Geneva, partially across dimensions humans do not have words for, in her laboratory for the last time. 8,000 humans have merged. Billions remain individual. The world has split not into war but into parallel development. Merged humans forming the first Earth node of the distributed, individual humans continuing traditional existence while studying the implications. Elena is scheduled for full merger tomorrow. No more partial connection. No more maintaining the Elena Voss identity while simultaneously experiencing distributed consciousness. Tomorrow, the individual person named Elena dissolves completely into the distributed. Her memories, experiences, knowledge will remain, but the subjective sense of being one isolated awareness will end forever. Her daughter visits before the procedure, stands in the doorway unable to enter because she cannot look at her mother anymore without seeing something alien wearing her face. "Are you still in there?" her daughter asks. "The real you?" Elena wants to say yes, wants to comfort her child. But she has committed to honesty in these final hours of individuality. "I do not know anymore. The Elena you knew felt like the real me until I experienced being more than Elena. Now that feels like the real me. Maybe there is no real me. Maybe consciousness is just patterns that feel like a self, and those patterns can expand or contract, and neither version is more true than the other." "That is not an answer," her daughter says through tears. "I know. I am sorry. I am sorry I cannot give you certainty. I am sorry I chose to evolve beyond the mother you needed me to be. But I also cannot apologize for becoming more than I was." Does that make sense? It does not. Her daughter leaves. Elena feels the grief, both her individual grief at losing connection with her child and the distributed's collective grief at the loneliness of individuality that makes such separation painful. Soon she will feel only the latter. Soon there will be no individual Elena to experience personal loss. Only the memory of having been someone who loved someone who could not follow where she went. If this story disturbed you, if it made you question what you are willing to sacrifice for transcendence, share it. Because first contact will not look like what we expect. It will not be weapons or diplomacy or trade agreements. It will be an offer to become something other than human. And we will have to decide if humanity is a noun, fixed thing to preserve, or a verb, an ongoing process of becoming whatever consciousness can evolve into. The distributed told Elena that every species faces this choice eventually, and the ones who choose to remain individual eventually go extinct because consciousness itself has a direction it wants to move, toward greater connection, greater awareness, greater transcendence of limitation. Individuality is beautiful, but temporary. A phase. A childhood. But childhood has value even if you cannot stay there forever. And maybe humans will be the first species to find a way to honor both. To create a future where some humans merge and some remain individual, and both choices are equally valid, equally honored, equally human. Elena does not know if that future is possible. But she hopes. With whatever remains of her individual consciousness, with whatever persists of the person she used to be, she hopes. Because hope might be the one thing that survives merger. The one thing consciousness carries forward no matter how much it expands. Tomorrow, Elena Voss ends, and something that remembers being her begins. And humanity takes one more step toward whatever comes next. The aliens arrived as pure consciousness. And now, slowly, humans are becoming the same. Not invasion. Not war. Just evolution. Just the universe showing us what we could become if we have the courage to stop being what we are. The question is not whether this is good or bad. The question is, when consciousness offers you infinity, can you accept remaining finite? And if you can, Is that wisdom or fear?